While on patrol along the coastline, the Coast Guard sees a ball floating in the water. At first, it seems like just a regular soccer ball drifting with the waves, but then they notice what's underneath the water's surface and stop dead in their tracks with fear. Before you watch, remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss another touching story like this one, and write in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. Ensign Sarah Mitchell peered through the fog hanging over the Pacific near Oregon's coast. It was 8:12 a.m. aboard the Harbor Star, a Coast Guard patrol boat on routine duty. The water was eerily still. Petty Officer Jack Harper looked up from his coffee and followed her gaze. Out there, floating gently about 200 yards in front of the ship, was something round, smooth, shiny, and clearly didn't belong there. "It looks more like a Christmas decoration than a soccer ball," he said quietly. "Way too shiny and that color of red." Chief Boatswain Tom Reynolds grumbled as he pushed his hat back. The crew had pulled all kinds of things from the water, from oil containers to complete mattresses, but this was something else. The thing shimmered strangely in the dull gray light, dark red, almost like it was glowing against the quiet sea. Mitchell noticed it wasn't moving with the water flow like the floating seaweed around it. It moved slowly but seemed to be going against the current on purpose. "It floats, but it's not a floating marker," Harper said under his breath, reaching for the pole with a hook. He stretched over the right side of the ship and carefully caught the thing. It turned a little in the water, then stayed still. Strangely, it felt heavier than it should. When he finally pulled it onto the deck and put it down, he looked confused. Cold, freezing cold. Mitchell bent down next to it. No line where it opens, no air plug, not even a brand name. This isn't made of plastic. The thing was about the size of a soccer ball, yes, but it was made of smooth metal with no joints. The only special mark on it was a small carved label near the bottom, TB-14. Reynolds wrinkled his forehead. "Have any of you ever seen anything like this?" Harper shook his head. "Not anything close." Before they could think about it more, the ship's underwater detection screen started blinking and making noise. "False alarm?" Mitchell asked, walking over to look at it. But Harper's face became tense. "No, it's detecting something below us." They all looked out at the water again. The ocean stayed calm, quiet, and the metal ball sat perfectly still on the deck, shining like it was watching them. Mitchell pressed a few buttons. "Signal's local, about 40 feet below us." "A whale?" Reynolds suggested. "Too still," Harper answered, his eyes getting narrow. "That's not drifting. It's staying in one place." All three stared at the screen. Back on the deck, Harper turned the red ball around in his hands. The carved letters, TB-14, were scratched up, like someone had handled it roughly for years. It wasn't new. It had been through something. "You said TB-14?" Reynolds asked suddenly. "That rings a bell." He scratched his beard while thinking. Bennett. Tyler Bennett. 14 years back, Kid went missing with his parents on a yacht off this coast. Harper looked up, shocked. "You were working here back then?" Reynolds nodded slowly. "Yeah, the kid was 5 years old. Family trip that went wrong. Their yacht vanished during a storm. Only his red ball was ever found floating near an Astoria, custom-made family keepsake." Mitchell's eyes got wide. "And that ball, was it red?" Reynolds' voice got quieter. "Deep red." Harper looked at the strange scratch marks again. Then Harper knelt down next to the detection screen, staring at the blinking dot 40 feet below them, still not moving. It wasn't the size that concerned him anymore. It was the fact that it hadn't moved even an inch in 10 minutes. "Sarah, get the camera ready," he said, standing up. "Let's see what's down there." Ensign Mitchell picked up the remote underwater camera from its box. It was a small waterproof device with bright lights and a strong cable. Within minutes, she had lowered it into the water, going down slowly through layers of greenish, cloudy water. They watched the video feed without talking. At first, just floating bits of stuff, then something, a silvery shine like metal foil underwater. She moved the camera left. "Wait," Harper said. "Go back." Mitchell moved back a few feet. The camera hung over what looked like a long piece of man-made fabric. It moved slightly like something was holding it. Harper leaned closer to the screen. "That's not seaweed." Reynolds made a sound. "That looks like a life jacket. We need to be sure. I'll go down there." Reynolds' eyebrows went up. "Are you sure?" Harper nodded. "It's less than 40 feet. I've done harder." By the time Harper put on his diving suit, the sky had gotten a bit darker. The strange stillness over the ocean made the stress feel worse. Mitchell stood ready with the lifting machine. Reynolds watched the detection system, which had started acting strange, like more dots were moving in and out of view. He jumped in. The first 20 feet were easy. Then, as he went through the temperature change layer, it got much colder suddenly. He could see less, too, but enough to see what came next. Hanging in the water, a green ball floated slightly above the bottom, connected by a chain to what looked like a rusty anchor. But that wasn't what made Harper stop. Behind the ball, covered in ocean dirt, was something bigger. A curved surface with a metal frame, a boat's outer shell. He called on the radio. "I found what looks like a sunken boat, partial outer shell, fabric life jacket, sending video up." The line made a static noise. Mitchell's voice came through. "Got it. Do you see a name or identification?" Harper didn't answer. He was moving toward what looked like a glass, round window, cracked but still there. And something or someone was inside. Back on the Harbor Star, Mitchell played Harper's body camera video on the screen, stopping it at the clearest shot. It was clear, a child's diving suit floating inside a partly broken boat hull. Next to it, many metal balls, both red and green colored, chained to the inner rail of what looked like a sunken boat's cabin. Harper took off his hood, water running down his back. "I saw a sign inside, couldn't read all of it, but the name started with Ben, something, could be Bennett." Reynolds sat completely still and shocked. That was the boat's name, the Bennett Dream. They bought it, used before that trip. No tracking devices back then, that's why we couldn't find them. Mitchell looked up from the computer. "I checked the data chip against NOAA's records. The time records stop at 7:44 in the evening on August 17, 2009, right before the storm came." Mitchell kept looking. "There's more. Some of the location signals show up in random places, coastal waterways, nearshore seaweed areas. Someone or something moved it over the years." Harper leaned in. "Sea animals?" "Not likely," Mitchell said. "But maybe water currents moved it, or maybe wreckage got caught in fishing nets. Either way, it always came back west toward this exact area of ocean." They got quiet again until the detection system made a long sound, and a new large shape showed up on the screen, this one much bigger than before. "Harper," Reynolds said, "that thing you saw, was it all in one piece?" "Not completely," he answered, "but it had shape. I think we're sitting right above the real wreck. Maybe only half of it has fallen apart. We need to go back down." "No," Harper said, "I need to go." He turned around, unzipping his diving suit halfway. His hand shook a little, not because he was cold, but because he realized something. "I didn't just find a sunken boat down there." He looked up at them, speaking quietly. "I found a room, a child's room, under the water." The wind had stopped completely by the time Harper went back underwater. The ocean looked like a mirror, flat, gray, and waiting. He didn't talk as he fixed his face mask. There was a heaviness in his silence that even Reynolds didn't break. Mitchell watched the depth screen. "Going down steady," she called out. Below, Harper's light made a thin beam through the darkness. The metal green ball he'd seen before hung still in the water, matching the red one they had pulled up hours before, chained to what looked like the corner of a sunken rail. As he got closer, a broken hull came into sight. He followed the chain line down and stopped suddenly. There it was, the outer shell of a small boat, its shape bent, but clearly whole. Faint white paint stuck to the damaged metal letters, Bennett Dream. Harper held himself steady. His breathing got faster. He moved closer, brushing away the cloud of dirt with his gloved hand. Inside the main cabin, through a broken round window, lay something pale. He adjusted his light and felt every muscle in his body go stiff. A child's bones, still fastened into a life jacket, moved gently in the current. The jacket was bright orange, kept safe beyond belief by the cold water. Its fabric had faded, writing, T. Bennett. For a moment he couldn't move. The radio made crackling sounds in his ear, Mitchell's voice, barely able to be heard. "Harper, give us an update. What do you see?" He couldn't answer. His throat felt tight, and all he could hear was his heartbeat in his ears. After what seemed like forever, he reached out a shaking hand and touched the side of the jacket. As he did, something small came loose and floated up, a waterproof container stuck under the strap. He caught it before it drifted away. Then his light beam moved wider, and he saw more metal balls, maybe 10 or 12, chained around the edges of the wreck like floating signs. They weren't just random wreckage. They were attached on purpose, weights for floating. He understood. Whoever had tried to save the Bennett Dream had probably attached these homemade metal floating devices desperately, hoping they'd keep the boat above water. But the storm must have ripped them loose, and one, Tyler's own red ball, had come to the surface that morning. When Harper finally came back to the surface, he gulped the freezing air. Mitchell and Reynolds hurried to pull him onto the boat. He set the container carefully onto the deck, water dripping from his sleeves. His face was white. "I saw him," Harper said quietly. He was still down there. The three stood without talking, the ocean lapping softly against the boat's side. For the first time that day, the ocean didn't feel endless. It felt heavy with weight. That evening, as the Coast Guard boat moved closer to the shore, the sun came through the clouds for the first time. The water turned golden, calm, and falsely peaceful. Mitchell sat beside Harper at the table inside the cabin, looking at the small container he'd brought back. After careful work with pliers, they managed to get it open. Inside was a folded, water-damaged piece of paper, still readable. August 17th, 2009. "The storm's getting worse. We've lost communication. Tyler's safe in the cabin. We attached the new metal floats. Maybe they'll help us stay above water. If anyone finds this, tell our daughter Emma we love her. We'll try to survive until morning." The handwriting stopped in the middle of a line. "They didn't make it," Harper said softly. Reynolds nodded. "No, but that boy didn't vanish. He's been right here waiting." Weeks later, an investigator named David Stone arrived at the station. He dropped a folder on Harper's desk and opened it. "This isn't just a family tragedy anymore," Stone said. Inside were copies of a boat transfer paper dated July 2009, just a month before the Bennett Dream disappeared. The boat had been bought used from a sea equipment maker based in California, a company that had gone out of business only a year later. Harper frowned. What kind of equipment maker? Stone turned the page. They worked on experimental floating systems, mostly for offshore oil platforms, not regulated, lots of failed test versions. Harper's stomach felt sick. So, you're telling me Tyler's parents bought a boat without knowing it had broken experimental equipment? Worse, Stone said. They may have been sold a test boat with changed weight systems that were never approved for open water. No paperwork, no backup floating equipment. Harper's throat felt tight. He thought back to the metal balls chained to the outer shell. They weren't toys, he said slowly. They were floating helpers, add-ons. Stone nodded. And unstable ones. A storm would have defeated them in minutes. Mitchell came in and froze as Harper showed her the papers. She whispered, "They thought they were ready, but they were set up to fail." The Bennett family had trusted what they'd bought, but what they'd actually gotten on was a boat with a hidden problem, something no regular buyer could have known. Stone looked serious. "The company closed, but now that we've recovered the wreck, we can track it down. This might reopen payment cases for other victims lost at sea in the same boat type." 3 days later, a small private boat came to the Harbor Star's dock. A woman in her 20s with reddish-brown hair tied back in a braid got off. Her name was Emma Bennett, Tyler's sister. She stared at the recovered items laid out in front of her. The metal red ball, the orange jacket, and the diary. Her eyes filled with tears. "Everyone said he was gone forever," she said. "But you found him." Harper nodded, his voice barely louder than a whisper. "We didn't find him," he said. "He found us." A week later, Harper led the final dive to recover the wreck. This time, the underwater silence felt different. Peaceful. Before surfacing, he placed the green ball beside the Bennett Dream one last time. Months later, a photo arrived in the mail. Emma on an Oregon beach, the red ball at her feet. On the back, "Thank you for giving him back to us." Tyler hadn't just been lost to the ocean, he'd been the key to a truth hidden for 14 years. Did you enjoy this story? If you were Harper and discovered Tyler's remains after 14 years, would you have had the strength to dive back down and recover everything for the family? Yes or no? Let us know in the comments below. If you like the story, subscribe to this channel and leave a like. Thanks so much for listening. See you in the next video. Have a great day.